We have lots of seats in front, and we have lots of seats over to the right-hand side. And Jerry is going to give an examination a little bit later on, and he's going to ask the people in the back and on the left-hand side first. Many of you have asked about a tape that Jerry has provided us. It's a tape which covers essentially the things that Jerry has been talking about, but it covers it in somewhat more detail, and in particular, it covers the relaxation exercises that he was talking about. Is that a correct evaluation, Jerry? We do have that tape, and I think it's wonderful when we have a guest speaker that will come in and provide us with that sort of thing. That tape will be made available to the membership, not through convention tape services at this convention, but subsequent to the convention we will have copies available for you, and there will be notice and direction on how you get that tape. So yes, we are not going to pigeonhole it, hide it, steal it, or anything. It will be made available, and we'll tell you how you get it. And I'm sure it'll be a good one. In case you may have gotten on the wrong airplane, let me say that this is our final session on stress management. And we're glad to see you here this morning. I know at the end of the session, as is usually the case, Jerry and Jean will be swamped with questions, and there will be a lot of people up here, and we'll probably be pressed for time. So while I have the microphone, rather than waiting until the end of the session, I will take this opportunity to thank Jerry and Jean for coming. I think they've made some of us a little bit uncomfortable. I think they've made a lot of us think. They've given us some great information, and they've been a part of our convention, which I, for one, particularly appreciate. So with that, let me say, Jerry, Jean, thank you for all that you've done with us and for us, and perhaps we can get together again sometime. Let's have a nice hand for both of them. And with that, I will turn the microphone over to Jean and remind our speakers at the podium that they're pretty much tied to this microphone. And I will remind our questioners in the audience that you are also, we hope, are tied to the microphone back there if you have questions, so that we can get a good tape. Thank you.
Good morning, and I'll say again that it's been our pleasure to be here and meet so many of you, and just hope we have been of some help. I want to talk to you just for a little bit this morning on being good to yourself. I hope we have made some of you squirm, and I hope that has caused some thinking that maybe will help you live more effectively. Be good to yourself, and if you really love your partner, male or female, be good to them too. But most of all, if you love yourself, you can then have love for someone else, right? I want to talk about your environment now. At home, yesterday we heard that these partners maybe became hostile, were angry, were jealous, had all sorts of negative thoughts and emotions, and maybe, just maybe, it's the environment, part of the whole holistic health style. Noise is very stressful, and if your partner comes home between jobs and you've got the TV going, the radio going, the dog barking, and the kids hollering, and maybe you too, why, it's very stressful, not only for the partner, but for the caller. First slide. This is just an idea of what, can you see that? No. See. I think we need some lights out. This is just an information slide of the number of decibels that go on around us. OSHA says we can tolerate about 15 minutes of decibels at around 100. So take a look at that and see what your home environment is like, or your workspace. This can be very stressful. Is your environment one of love, rapport, communication, kindness? And you know, these things beget the same in your partner. If you're hostile and angry, then the partner's certainly going to be hostile and angry. The partner being the caller or vice versa, okay? I don't want to leave anybody out today. You may want to look at that. Is your environment one of fun? Laughter. Laughter is so important in our lives, and we forget that. We also forget how to play. Dr. Carl Symington says that first 5 years of our life, we are playing with the right brain, which is our creative, playful brain. Then we go to school and we start learning about the left brain, the analytical, and we forget all about the right brain. And we as adults may have to learn how to play again. We're deteriorated children. And it takes work, ladies and gentlemen. It is not going to come from a couple of days listening to two people try to tell you what makes stress in your life and what makes you unhappy, what gives you those negative thoughts and emotions. It takes work. Jerry and I work at it all the time, and we're always working at changing our lifestyle, better eating habits, exercise, and there are days when we don't want to do it. It takes work, and if you're really interested and you love yourself and you love your partner, you're going to start in some small way of something that we have said during these few days to change that and give you a happier life. We only pass this way once. Go out and smell the daisies and be good to yourself. Next slide. Perhaps the most serious health problem is hypertension. Oh, there's a little bit on laughter. Okay, I'll let you read that a minute. I kind of like that one where it says jog internally, because we need to exercise more externally, our external body and our internal, mind and spirit. Okay, next slide, honey. Hypertension. This is called a silent killer because most often there are no symptoms. And this is number one killer in America. And of course, mainly among men. So perhaps you ladies can take a tip on some of the things you're reading up there. A profile of a heart attack victim. Now, all these things I tell you, they're not Jean Downing's statistics or it's my study and my research, yes. But it does come from experts. This is from Framingham, Mass., where they do an awful lot of research on health. Can you read that? Can you read that okay? Okay. Just take a note and see where you might want to help your loved one. All the risk factors for heart attack, hypertension can be controlled by us. Isn't that amazing that we can have that control over our lifestyle, over our health? Next slide, please. One biggie is exercise. I could go on and on about all of these things, about how to exercise properly, give you the formula for your target heart rate and everything. If you're interested, you will get out there and do a little research, do a little digging. Read Ken Cooper's book on aerobic. As I mentioned the other day, less than 2% never exercise. You say, oh, I exercise. Gosh, I go all day long. You know, I clean the house. I go out in the garden. I walk around the block. That's not enough. What you need is aerobic. And I know you've heard about aerobic. It's... Next slide, please. Okay, it's the huff and puff exercise. And this is for a minimum of 15 to 20 minutes. Now that means huffing and puffing for 15 to 20 minutes. And that's at your target heart rate, THR, target heart rate. And if you're interested, the formula, the simple formula is take 220 minus your age. And that's what you need to exercise at. That's a pretty safe formula for most people to start at. And if you have health problems, especially heart disease, you need to consult with your doctor, of course. That's a pretty safe formula to exercise at. You need to do this at least 3 times a week. If you're doing it for weight reduction, you need to do it every day. That's simple. There's 168 hours in a week. Surely you are worth 3 hours a week to exercise a little. Walking is fantastic. Get your partner out there. Maybe it's better to go for a walk for 15 minutes than to sit down to a heavy dinner before you go out square dancing. That can also cause you to communicate, which everybody needs. And what I heard yesterday, I think this is probably the greatest need that you all have, is to learn to communicate with your partner. And communicate effectively, not hostilely, but with good intention and constructively. The benefits of exercise, I think you saw on the other slide. Another benefit is, of course, weight reduction. Obesity is the major health problem. Leads to heart attacks, strokes, hypertension, diabetes, cirrhosis. It aggravates almost any health problem you already may have or may be working on. Ken Cooper, again, his book is probably the best on exercise that I know of. And he said that a few years ago when they were revamping Yankee Stadium, they had to reduce the seating capacity by 9,000 seats and increase the seats from 19 inches to 22 inches to accommodate for the American posterior. That's kind of sad, but that is the way our society is going. Exercise, folks. And Dr. Cooper says exercise is often the first thing to go for because that takes the most dedication and work and motivation. And often when a person starts that and gets going and sees how good they feel, then the other health behavior modifications follow, like quitting your smoking and watching your calories. Then it's easier to do those things if you start your exercise first. Try it, you'll like it. You'll feel great. Now, in your packet, and you don't have to get it out, but I gave you the U.S. dietary goals. Read those over. If you don't know a whole lot about nutrition, this will give you a good idea of now what finally the physicians, the healthcare people, and the food and drug are coming around to saying how much diet really does affect your health and your stress and ability to handle it. It really does, folks. Next slide. I'm sorry, but when I get depressed, I eat. We do eat for a lot of reasons. And here again, you need to be aware of why you are eating, why you are putting on those pounds, why are you eating improperly. Too much salt, too much sugar, too much fat, too much red meat, all those things that you can read about in the dietary goals. Next slide, please. Motivation for lifestyle change. These are good tips if you're really interested in becoming healthier and happier and are really interested in helping your loved one. First thing, as I mentioned the other day, is awareness. You've got to be aware that you need a change and where you need a change. You've got to do a little meditation and see where in your life is the real stress hitting you, why, and how. What is it doing to you? Is it worth dying for? Think positively. Sure, you can change. You can tell Junior down there in your deep mind that you can change. Get those old negative thoughts out of there. You can do it. Then you need the desire for change, and so forth. Next slide, please. I hope you can all read that. Okay. I hope that as you go home and go back and start changing a few behaviors, you will learn to live life and learn to love it and learn to smell the daisies. Thank you.
You thought I wouldn't be back, didn't you? Why, I have to confess to you, one of you made me feel guilty. When I came when I came through the lobby this morning, I said, "How are you doing this morning?" to a lady, and she said, "I'm all stressed." And I thought, I hope you know I'm kidding. I immediately start to say to myself, oh boy, I really failed. I didn't help this person live a happy, joyous life. I've really blown it. That's the irrational thinking that helps people feel lousy and causes emotional stress. I'm going to talk with you this morning. You see, I guess you're the hardcore people. You come back for more. I don't know. That's why since you have, we can really get down to the nitty-gritty this morning, because now you've had a little exposure, and I've been trying to build as we go along. So this morning, I hope we get into some of the real practical solutions to the emotions that cause you stress. I do have a request somewhere here. Somewhere. I've got it here anyway. One of the callers talked with me yesterday. Well, several people talked with me between times. But one in particular said, we're a little disappointed because we hoped that you would be giving us something more practical in terms of communication. And he was very specific, and he shall remain nameless. But he said, how do I communicate to my partner that I don't want to talk with anyone 1 hour before the performance or maybe for an hour after, and that anything that's said to me during that period goes through one ear and out the other? How do I communicate to my partner that that's the way it is? So, because of that request and some of the other, I'm going to spend some time this morning with you in communication. Because from yesterday afternoon session, I believe that it would help. I think there is a need. I got the feeling that there may be some communication, but it is the sort that doesn't help people live more happily and more relaxed. So I'm going to talk, first of all, about communication. Then we're going to get back to the issue that I think I spend most time with in therapy, and that is how to minimize, how to reduce the emotions that cause stress and pain. You know, when Jean was talking, and in the definition of stress, it says, and now, since you're all in the postgraduate course this morning, so we move on a bit. You see, we've been talking about stress all the time, just as though it was, if something's happening, like the noise slide that Jean uses, the decibel. It's like, if you have 120 decibels, then that also means you're stressed. That's not true. Now I'm going to make a differentiation for us. The things that are outside of us, the dog barking, the mate shouting at you, the smell of the sewer plant, whatever sorts of things are outside, are stressors. They aren't stress because it depends on what we do with what's outside, whether it becomes stress or not. There are lots of things going on around us right now. But what you do with them, what you do in terms of the evaluation, and we'll go back to that a little later, because what you do in terms of your learned beliefs determines whether the noise becomes a stressor, whether I think about jackhammers in the street when I'm trying to do a lecture. I can decide, inside, I may choose to make that a stressor or not. I know the stressor, whether I can choose whether to make that stress or become stress. You see the difference? Okay, because now I'm going to be talking a little bit differently this morning. So, okay, that's what we're going to work on. So, and I also plan to get back to the issue of managing anger. Is Fred here this morning? Hey, good. I'm going to get to it, Fred. I didn't forget. Okay. Okay, that's great. Let's first talk about communication. Now, I have to talk in general terms. I can't talk in specific terms to you because each one of us is an individual, and so I can just talk to you a little bit about the sort of things I encounter in communication between couples in the counseling and in the therapy I do. First of all, I can guess when a couple walk into my office, I can guess and usually be 90% right that the problems that they're really debating, the issues are either in-laws, money, or sex. Those are the issues that people tend to get uptight and be having some conflict about. Now, internally, it may not be those things that are going on, but those become the focus often. Now, I think it's very helpful in communication to be assertive. Now I have to explain what I mean, because assertiveness has gotten a bad name. It's associated often with some of the groups that allegedly turn out militant feminists. Now, if you believe that, why then you can get into trouble because then it immediately has a black name with some people. What I'm talking about, when I talk about being assertive, I'm talking about being open, warm, and honest. Open, warm, and honest. I notice warm's in there. That indicates you have some consideration for the people you're working with. Open, warm, and honest in my communication. Now, think of that as a continuum. Right in the middle, in the balance, and Gene and I talk a lot about balance, health, mental things. Right in the middle is this assertiveness, being open, warm, and honest in asking what you want, in expressing how you feel to your mate or to other people. I'm going to get away from this partner's term because it has a specific meaning to you folks that in the real world out there isn't exactly the same. So I'm going to talk about mates. So it can be either sex. So think about that continuum with assertiveness in the middle, in a balance, and on one side that is the non-assertive, which is simply not standing up for one's right in an ineffectual, weak way, often having some hidden sort of agenda back there. Well, the real picture is, most of you folks aren't old enough to remember Casper Milk Toast, but Casper Milk Toast is the person that would be the unassertive. We think of in terms of weak, ineffectual, not willing to express themselves. Okay, that's one side. Then on the other side, think of as the aggressive style. Now, I'm not talking about some people who are in sales think as a very positive thing the aggressive approach, which means you're a go-getter. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a style where people stand up for their rights in such a way that as to dominate, to hurt, or put others down. See, now, on two opposites of the extreme of the continuum. Now, the people who are weak and ineffectual feel lousy about themselves because they don't stand up for their rights. The people who are dominant, who are very aggressive, don't feel so good about themselves because half the time they're feeling guilty, they come on this strong. So in the middle is the person who feels less stress, who feels confident and healthy because they communicate in an assertive manner. Open, warm, and honest, okay? Now, between couples or groups or wherever you are, the assertive style tends to work best and keeps your stress at a lower level. Because you can respect yourself, you're in the process of respecting others. Let me give you an example and how the three different types would handle it. Let's say you're at work and a friend needs a ride and they want to ride home. It would be inconvenient for you to take them. So if you're unassertive in your mind, you'd kind of mill around and say, I really don't think I can do that. But then you would likely inconvenience yourself a great deal and go ahead and take them all the time, saying bad things to yourself because you're doing it. The aggressive style would be to say, no, forget it. You're always making demands on me, and I can't bother with you today. Now, the assertive style, and the one we're shooting at, the balance, would be something like, it would be inconvenient for me today, and I'd like to assist you, but I must do some other things. I choose to do some other things, but I will take you to a bus stop. See the differences now? Okay, I wanted to illustrate that because now, since our goal with couples communication is to be assertive, open, warm, and honest, use it because it gets the best results. It's a very practical sort of thing. Often, couples think they're communicating, that is, words flowing back and forth, when they're actually trying to hurt, humiliate, or dominate their mate. This is stressful when that's going on. They use, and now just, here's a practical suggestion. If you're able to avoid the you messages, which are accusative and generally aggressive, and use I messages, then you're likely to keep the stress down. If you're able to talk, example, if I say, when you are silent and withdrawn before a caller performance, I feel alone and isolated. That's an assertive statement, isn't it? Because I take the responsibility for how I feel. Now, the aggressive statement would be a you message which says, you act like I don't exist when you're getting ready for a performance. You see the difference? Okay. Now, those sound like small issues, but they make a great deal of difference. And in marriage counseling, I spend a great deal of time helping people retrain the way they phrase the sentences to each other. That can reduce the stress. Okay. One thing that really happens, people think they're communicating, but what they do is like every time they have a hurt, every time there's a hurt or a slight goes on with a couple, it's like they take a brick and put it in a sack over their back, each one of those hurt. Then, and usually it's the wife that comes, then as it keeps going and those bricks keep accumulating, then when the opportunity comes along, instead of she's acting in a very unassertive way, isn't that true? Being quiet, not talking. Then when the opportunity comes along, instead of getting into the middle with assertiveness, she goes all the way, becomes aggressive, and takes that sack of bricks and starts whacking him over the head. Now, that so often is the case, and people are they're unforgiving. They want some revenge. They've had all those hurts. They've got those bricks back there, and they're going to use them. When I say to them, we're going to start out with the rule that everything that's happened back there is history. it has no bearing on where you go from here. They really start to be tongue-tied. After all, they saved all those bricks up. They've got to use them. They've got to take some revenge. They really dislike it. It takes a while to get around that and start to communicate by saying what you would like to have happen and simply looking at what's back there as history that you want to change and move in a different direction. Okay, so this is just one little tip. Practice courtesy in communications. Don't interrupt. Don't make disparaging sounds and noises, or sounds and statements. That sounds pretty simplistic, doesn't it? But when I have couples in my office, they usually think I'm a referee, that I'm going to get in there and try to keep some order while they thrash out some issues. I'm really looking for communication and to help them learn, and what I want them to do is to listen to what the other person says. Half the time when couples are having an angry debate, one of them is not listening to what the other person is saying. They're waiting for their opening so they can get in and stab their mate. They don't hear what's going on. So I'm suggesting that if you want to communicate more effectively, that you listen and not interrupt. Now sometimes one or two is so dominating that they may want to use all the time. So I use a little egg timer, a 3-minute egg timer, and if I have difficulty in balancing, I say, okay, this 3 minutes is yours. Now go for it. You get 3 minutes when at the end, then it's your partner's. If you have to resort to that so everyone gets heard, do it. Sounds kind of dumb and simple, doesn't it? Once again, I recommend these things to you because they work. If you're having difficulty with communication, think about some of these things. Keep in mind that your goal is to express your honest feelings and desires, not to punish. Now, remember, if what you're doing to communicate is not working, it's time to try something else. Because if you keep on doing what you're doing, you'll keep on getting what you've got. And I say that again. If you keep on doing what you're doing, you'll keep on getting what you got. And if you don't like what's going on right now, then instead of pushing harder, you better change something. Now, I guess what I'm saying then is it's important to be assertive, to be open, warm, and honest in asking for what you want. You may always be successful in being assertive. That does not mean you are always going to get what you ask for. You see the difference? Being assertive means asking for what you want in an open, warm, honest way. You may choose to do that. You may not. If you ask to have a diamond ring, you can be assertive by asking for it. You may not receive it. So don't confuse the two. You can be 100% assertive and not get what you want all the time, but it's a goal in itself. Okay. I might also mention one good system we use is when couples are having difficulty, we have a sort of a contract negotiating system, and I ask each person to just ask one small thing of the other. Now, I won't take any big nebulous things like that are not specific, like I want him to treat me better. What does that mean? I don't know what that means, and generally the person doesn't. So it has to be specific and small and deliverable. I was working with a couple last week, and let's see, her request was, I would like to have him sit down and tell me just one thing that has happened to him during the day. And he immediately says, well, when I do that every day, and you're always busy rattling around the kitchen and taking care of the kids and all this sort of thing. I said, whoa, wait just a second. That is the request. Now, we don't talk about what's happened back there. Will you do it or not? He says, well, yes, if I'm not interrupted. So, okay, he says, my request is that she listens to me without interruption for 10 minutes. They were able to come out with a contract. She had her request and he came back. I'm very interested when I get back this week to find out how it went, because they aren't used to listening to each other. It's a training device, but negotiating a contract is not confined to corporations and labor. It really helps with couples. So that's another little tip for communication. If you really want to get into this too, you get into some nonverbal communication. And I'm going to start to mention some books today if you're interested. There's a book by Birdwhistle, Professor Birdwhistle. That sounds like a fake name, but it's not the case. He's one of the outstanding experts on nonverbal communication. He has a book out that's called How to Read a Person Like a Book, which is just exactly what it's about. And you see, a lot of our communication, as a matter of fact, up to 70% of the communication comes about in a nonverbal way. You make some gestures or you make some nonverbal movements that project to me. I react to those and react back to you. And then the only thing we have at a conscious level is the emotional response. If we don't like it, then it'd be negative. If we do like it, it's positive. And all that communication is usually on a subconscious level. They've got a lot of experimentation that proves that. That's why when people talk about vibes, they're talking about reality in communication. That happens, and it happens at a subconscious level. Okay, that's all the time I want to spend on communicating. I just want you to know that communicating assertively reduces stress, and that's what Gene and I are talking about. How you may reduce stress in your living. Okay, I want to talk about managing negative emotions. How many of you were not here yesterday morning? Okay, quite a few of you. Thank you. So I want to bring you up to speed along with reinforcing some of the things we talked about that are important. I said yesterday that negative emotions are those emotions that one either hurt or emotions that block the goal direction. And I'm thinking about anxiety, once again, guilt feelings, depression, jealousy, all these, anger. How could I forget anger? So these are the ones I want to talk about. Those are negative, and once again, since some of you folks missed out on my little exercise, well, I think we'll have a different one today. How'd you like to do a little exercise with me? Just take a few minutes, very harmless, I assure you. And this is an observation awareness exercise. Now, what I'd like to have you do, kind of pair up. It'd be even best if you could face someone that you're not as used to being with, a stranger. That would help, but you're not confined to that. Just pair up for a minute. This is going to take about 1 minute. Now, those of you who aren't close and you come out uneven and you don't have someone with you, you get to observe. You're official observers and get an idea of how you like or what sort of emotion you feel that you see expressed around you. Okay. Very simple instructions. This may be very difficult for the callers to do when I get to a certain point, but it's really pretty straightforward. Okay, look at your partner. I want you to be aware of what's going on, aware with them. Just look straight at their face. Now here's the tough part. Look straight at them. I won't have you doing this very long. Just look straight at them. You're going to be aware of what's going on with them and what's going on with you. You don't have to look at me. Look straight at your partner. I'll give you plenty of time. Now, here's the part that's very important. I do not want you to communicate in any way. Do not talk, nor do not communicate verbally or non-verbally. What I want you to do is to look and be aware. No communication. Now's the time for your favorite poker face. No expression. None whatsoever. I'll give you all the time you need. Don't get in a hurry. Go right ahead. It's all right. 4 or 5 minutes should be plenty. Okay, now you can stop. Well, that's even easier than last time, wasn't it? You didn't have to call names. Very easy one, wasn't it? I'm glad to hear an honest person. Okay, then what sort of emotion did you experience, if any? You know, very simple little exercise. Didn't have to, I didn't make it really tough. Sometimes I ask people to reach out and touch their partner while they're not using any expression. What sort of an emotion did you experience? What's that? Okay, this lady says slight embarrassment. That's for our recording that I'm repeating that. Stress. All right, sir, this person says stress. Okay, that's being honest. Yes, ma'am. Okay. And that was about 3 seconds, I think. I was trying to be very nice. Yes, okay. Self-consciousness, stress. I expect, if some of you are totally honest with me this morning, you might have felt some anger. Some of you may have felt that. What's that dumb shrinko up to this morning? And at me, yes, yeah. I once in a while encounter that, and that's all right. I've been the target before. It's all right. But now tell me, where did those emotions come from? What caused the emotion? Now, those of you who were here yesterday morning should have the answer. What's that? The feelings? The cause? Well, in that case, you could have had the feelings of anxiety, embarrassment, stress, and not even had the exercise. They were all internal. You see, I'm very sneaky because now I'm giving you the test for what happened yesterday. What I claim, and you remember my little formula? My little formula that says, if you take an event, and this was a little event, and would someone knock out a few of these lights over here, please? If you take an event and then multiply it or put something into it, and that is your own learning, your own belief system, then the emotion is the result. Now, the lady right here was right on. She says, we don't usually look at a person that much. Our society has taught us that to look at a person in the face and without expression, there's something kind of crawly about that. Yeah. So that's deep down in your mind is that learning. Now, I'm illustrating this because we want to get at some of the things that cause you more pain. Here's a painless exercise. Fold your hands in front of you just like that. Okay, that's an easy one, isn't it? Now take a look. Which thumb's on top? Whichever one, just note that. That's all. Just note it. Now refold your hands with the other thumb on top. Does that feel strange? Okay. Part of it is right and left brain business, but also part of it is just your prior learning that says, I fold my thumbs with my right one on top. Fold your arms across your chest. Now reverse them. Now this isn't very harmful. It's very harmless which way you fold your arms. But I'm just illustrating to you some of the learning that's deep in your subconscious. Now, you know, you generated the emotion that took place a few minutes ago. You generated it inside. Your thinking, your subconscious learning was what caused that. Now, the flip side is, you see, I couldn't cause you to feel embarrassed by that dumb little exercise. I don't have that control over you, do I? Isn't that wonderful? You had the control. You're the one that chose to feel embarrassed. You're the one that chose to feel stressed. But if I can't do it to you, then you have some control. I'm right back where I was yesterday when I said, nobody can make you angry. Only you can do it. Now, okay. Isn't it wonderful? You have the control. Now, but you say to me, okay, Jerry Downing, but it's almost instantaneous. I didn't have any thinking go through my head. It just happened bang like that. I did the exercise and I felt upset, tight, embarrassed. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. What happens is we learn as little kids about how to react to certain things, like we don't stare at one another's face because that's embarrassing. We learn that, and that's stuck right into our subconscious. And it gets there, well, at first it's conscious, and then it goes subconscious. Now, what happens is, and Gene was calling the subconscious Junior, one of the people we really respect a lot in this business, calls the subconscious Junior. It's a handy term because Junior is a willing servant. He does or she does, I think it's probably non-sexual. Junior does what you teach it to do. If he learns something, then it's easy for him to come back and tell you, okay, this is what you believe. How many, all of you that can play the piano, hold up your hand. Okay, now I'm addressing the ones of you who didn't hold up your hand. Because what happened when I made that statement, when I asked the question, how many of you can play the piano, what you said instantaneously, what was going on, down in your mind, in your deep self, you asked Junior, can I play the piano? Junior comes right back and says, no, you can't play the piano, so you didn't hold up your hand. You can all play the piano. Some of you play it better than others. There is not a person here, I believe, who could not play chopsticks, and yet you checked in with Junior, and Junior told you can't play the piano, and so you told me. You see what goes on? Now see, I'm starting to get at the rapidity with which your brain functions, checks with your subconscious, and turns around. Let me give you another example. How many of you drive? This ought to be better. A whole bunch. How many of you drive a stick shift? Okay. I will wager with you that when you go to work or go to town or you're traveling around in your automobile, that you may drive right down the street. You are without even thinking much about the driving. And at one time in your background, it was very much in your conscious mind what took place. Someone took you out to the parking lot and said you put in the clutch, and then you add the accelerator, you let the clutch out carefully, you keep steering, you look out for other cars. And what we're talking about, and sometimes the car hopped like a jackrabbit as you were learning to let the clutch out. And so you had a feeling, you in your conscious mind, every act was conscious. See what I'm talking about? You went, and now you drive through the city, you see the signal lights and you stop, you talk with your friends, you listen to the radio, and you don't consciously think about that driving much, do you? It's all tucked away. Junior does it for you. Put it on autopilot. Say, Junior, okay, you take care of that and I'll talk with my friend. Yeah. Okay? That's neat. So far. Now, if you wanted to change what Junior is saying to you, if you wanted to change that learning that you put in there, what you need to do is start to pull back into the conscious what's going on, the learning that's there, and to change it. Let's say in the city of Phoenix, you wanted to change. Well, let's say that the mayor, I don't even know the mayor's name, but I'm sure he's a good mayor. Let's say he wanted to change something. Let's say he said, I'm tired of the signal lights operating the way they do, so from now on, starting tomorrow, every time you see a green light, that means stop. Every time you see a red light, that means go. Now, aside from the massive traffic jams and accidents you would have to start in your conscious mind, you'd have to pull up what you've taught Junior, and you would say consciously, okay, that light's green, that means stop. That light's red, that means go. And you would change over the learning that you've been operating with. You took it into conscious. After you did it a while, then it'd be back in the subconscious. Junior's on autopilot again, and you're operating very nicely with the new rules. You see how it works? Now, let's get to the practical side. Wow. What do we go to, 10:15? Yeah. Okay, good. Let's look at some of the self-statements that you've taught Junior, because you're the active participant. Some of that you may have that cause pain, that block your goal development. May I have the next slide? Okay. I ran these on the board while I was doing a class with students at the college, and it was before I came in. I was working with a group, and they said, "Boy, I believe all that stuff. That looks like the truth to me." Well, that's because Junior's operating. Look at the top one gives you an idea. If you have some feelings of lack of self-worth, it's very likely you've taught Junior, I must have love or approval from all the people that are important to me. Is that the truth? No, it's not the truth. But a lot of us have that deeply embedded. Once again, and talking about performance anxiety, the one that enters in is this: I should be thoroughly competent, adequate, and achieving in all respects. That's an absolute. That doesn't leave me any room to be human. Yet, if I've taught Junior that, and I've learned that effectively, then I'm going to feel a lot of anxiety because I'm fearful I won't live up to this. Oh, number 3. That's the anger one. That's the button. That's the way the anger button is wired. Because when I have that, when Junior believes that, then I am a pigeon for anger. That means anyone on the outside can function or act in a certain way that I don't like, and immediately I can feel angry. Because if I believe, and when I heard you folks talking yesterday, I cannot change your situation. I cannot change what happens in the world around you. I'm offering you the way to change the thinking. So what happens? People, incidents, events have less negative impact on you. So that's the primary one for anger. Now, Fred, when you stood up yesterday afternoon and you told me you were angry with me, and that's okay. I appreciate honesty. When you did that, if you were in truth angry with me because I was addressing mostly women and not the male partners, what you were saying to yourself, Junior was telling you somewhere deep down there, that guy should act in the way I think he should. He should be talking to all of us. And if he doesn't, he's bad, wicked, and awful, and should be punished. I don't know, Fred. That's the way my Junior works, not yours. And that's what I use on the traffic violators in front of me. So that's the one that generates anger. I'm going to jump to number 5, because a lot of us were taught at our mother or father's knee that life should be fair. If Junior really is indoctrinated in that, and he really comes back with that, then you're going to be awfully disillusioned and feel very unhappy because life is not fair, is it? Or hasn't that been your experience? There are times... now, that doesn't mean I'm going to start to feel that, oh, well, doesn't do anything. I think it's very unfair, and I don't like it, that little kids are starving in Ethiopia. That just proves to me that the world is not very fair. I don't have to like it, and I'm going to do something about the things that I think are important. You see the difference there? It doesn't mean like going blah and flat and not being concerned about the state of the world or my state, but it's simply a matter of saying, okay, the world is not fair, and for me to be upset about that doesn't make good sense. It takes away from my ability to function and to do something about the unfairness I see. Well, let's see a few more. If you really believe that your misery comes from external sources and you can do little about it, you are absolutely right. Because you have Junior trained to believe that, and if he said, if something happens and you say, well, that's what happened, this mate is being mean to me, then that means that's external, I can do nothing about the way I feel, then you're right. You're doomed to feel angry, upset, put down because you believe that. Now, you can start to change that. I'm not going to take the time to go into the rest of those, but the ones I have up there, 8 of those, are some of the primary ones that the psychologist Albert Ellis thinks that, well, they're the most common that we encounter when we're talking about psychotherapy. So, well, let me mention one other way that you can put yourself in bad shape. Words are not emotional by themselves, but words carry emotion. They're like a vehicle. Let me give you an illustration. How I label within my head, once again at a subconscious level, determines my attitude. Now, the issue of death is a tough one in our society. As a matter of fact, Albert Ellis says that one reason we feel death is terrible is because when we were trained, when we were just little kids and we started to run across the street, our parents grab us because they're afraid the car will run over us, and they say, oh, stop that. The parents get all upset. And so he claims that a lot of our subconscious training is saying it would be terrible, we'd be disobedient to our parents if we became dead. And he says that's one reason we have this sort of outrageous attitude. You see, look at it this way. If the doctor tells me tomorrow when I get home, if I'm examined, and the doctor tells me I have 6 months to live. Now, what has he told me? He's told me only that I'm going to die sooner than I expected. Now, I know very few people that are going to, or who have or will avoid physical death. I just don't know many of them. So all I found out is that I'm likely to die sooner than I expected. You see? Now, you and I, well, I don't know about this state. In Colorado, about every day, there are 4 or 5 people that start out from home in the morning expecting to be right back there at night and who never make it home. They end up in traffic accidents. They're dead. Now, we tend not to think about that as reality. When we start to think of it as terrible, awful, horrible. Using that label of words sets our attitude so it becomes more stressful, because if I know that this is going to happen to me, if I believe the doctor and it's going to happen to me within 6 months, I have a choice of labeling that really unpleasant, or labeling it as horrible, awful, catastrophic, or viewing it at a lower level, which says, okay, that's really inconvenient. Sooner than I expected. I don't like it. Now, by that very labeling, I have chosen to make that last 6 months productive, make them more comfortable. If I go the other direction, then I'm likely to have a horrible 6 months. You see the difference that labeling? Now, I use a real extreme with you because lots of people trot around and I hear them say, boy, it'd be terrible if it rains today. I'm planning to have a picnic. Well, if you're labeling events that way, then it's likely that's what you're going to have. See the difference there? Okay. Let's go back then to the steps to change negative thoughts. Because the negative thoughts cause stress. They really don't help you. They interfere with living an effective life. I talked about the same process works that we talked about yesterday with performance anxiety. Performance anxiety is simply one of several negative emotions that cause us pain, that block our goal direction. Let's take the example of anger. If you can change the event, if you can do something with the event, do something about it. If you can make sure people hear your concern assertively, what I say, in an honest, open, warm manner, let people know of what problems you see and see if there can be some change. That's trying to change the event. That can help. So don't hesitate to do that. But if you're not able to get the change you want, then you do have access to changing how you feel about it. So the first step, just like we talked about yesterday, is to identify the emotion. If you feel angry, identify it, embrace it. Be able to say, I feel angry. Then link the event. Some of the people that I talked with yesterday afternoon here and later were saying, in effect, they linked the anger with a lack of communication, for example, in couples. They're saying we don't communicate the way we want to. Okay. Or he or she doesn't allow me the freedom I want. Okay. Then you've linked it with the event. Now look for what you're saying to yourself. And we come right back to the number 3 that I talked about. He or she does not act in the way I feel they should, that I want them to. Well, want them's okay, but they should act in the way I want them to. And if they don't, they're bad, wicked, and awful and should be punished. And that's the low-level statement that goes on internally. That's what Junior has learned. And when it happens, then you feel angry. You change it. You take the step and you change it. A statement that makes sense in that case is, he or she act in the way they see fit. I may not like it, and I would like to see it change, and I'm going to be honest and open and warm and ask for the changes that I'd like to see. But they are going to act in the way they see fit. Just the very process of going through those steps starts to diminish the anger. It isn't as strong as when you started. Okay? What about, let me use another one. Guilt. Guilt is kind of an emotion that I do not like. I've encountered that. I really had strong guilt feelings, even though I've been teaching this stuff right here for 8 years or so now, since I switched over from being a conventional psychologist. But guilt is feeling guilty is a lousy feeling for me. When I decided, you see, I'm taking response. When I decided that it was best for my mother to go into a nursing home, I really had to wrestle with the feelings of guilt for several months. Now, what happens to many of us is that we are vulnerable to emotional blackmail when guilt is the end result. People, now my mother wasn't trying to make me feel guilty. She wasn't blackmailing me emotionally. Junior told me, good sons don't put their mother in nursing homes. That's what Junior told me, loud and clear, day after day. When the truth of the matter, and see now I'm combating the irrational statement that Junior had learned, the truth of the matter is my mother would be better off as she is. She became more social. It was delightful the way she blossomed in the setting. But it took me quite a while to get past the guilt feelings that Junior had generated. You see how I'm talking about? Now I say emotional blackmail. I see that happen often with the guilt. Once again, a very stressful emotion. I see it happen when people in couples, when mates try to manipulate one another. Sometimes very effectively. Probably the bottom line on emotional blackmail is a person who will use threats of suicide on those close about them. And I've seen that. If you're going to, I recall one. If you leave me, I'm going to kill myself. Talk about maximum emotional blackmail, because you never know whether they mean it or not. Some people, I'm really convinced, do kill themselves to get even with someone that's left. That's kind of an ultimate statement of revenge, isn't it? Okay, I'm about out of time. This formula, I really hope you try it. Just try it a little bit. The anger is a tough one. The depression is a tough one. The guilt feelings. I believe any time you experience these emotions, these stressful emotions, that you must be telling yourself something that is not true. Something you've learned, and it may have been appropriate at one time, but it's no longer true. Now, this doesn't take away, I have some very firm ethical attitudes and beliefs. When I talk to you about changing belief systems, I'm not for one moment saying, get rid of the core beliefs. I'm a very deeply committed Christian man. I have no intention. Those are valuable beliefs that I carry, and they really work well for me. So I'm not talking about you getting at some of the beliefs that Junior embraces and tosses back to you all the time that are valuable, productive, and who enhance your living. I'm talking about the ones that cause you the pain, that keep you from getting to your goals. And you can tell, we gave you the whole series of symptoms that you'll notice associated with the negative emotions, the sweaty palms, all the things your bod talks about. So I suggest, it would really be neat. I would really appreciate you doing something. I know I won't have a chance to talk with all of you. We're going to be in the hospitality room this afternoon, but what I would really enjoy is if perhaps tomorrow morning you would come up to me and say, okay, Jerry Downing, I tried your system. I felt angry. I felt upset. I felt tense sometime in the last 24 hours, and I tried to see what I'm telling myself. I would be delighted if I could get a little feedback from you, because we'll be around in the morning. And as we've said before, the only reason we offer this to you is because it works. I've seen it work time after time. So, I'm going to close out. Well, one moment. What I'm going to say is, though, that if you think about the things that we've talked about before, I hope you take seriously the issues on health. It's so circular between what's going on in your mind and body. It's very, very circular. When I used to interview people who came in for therapy, I never asked about what their health habits were. I do that all the time now. I had a lady come in for real anxiety problems, and she was always uptight, and I said, well, how much coffee do you drink? She said, I only have a cup a day. I said, well, what other things do you drink or eat? She says, well, I drink about a gallon of Coke a day. Now, when she told me that, I knew where the caffeine level was with her, and when she didn't need psychotherapy. She needed to cut out the Coke or cut out the caffeine. She was able to reduce the anxiety. So the health is very important. I consider it just locked right in with the psychotherapy. Think about not getting rid, but reducing the effect of those irrational thoughts. So you have to be aware of them, start to change them, because then you can really reduce the stressful emotions. While you're in the process of doing that, use the relaxation and visualization, especially the imagery while you're relaxed. You can even use that in getting along better with your mate. When you're relaxed, practicing, visualize the two of you talking calmly, carefully, considerate of each other. Visualize what you want to have happen, and you're training Junior. Junior will say, how do I respond to that mean remark my mate just made? And you say, okay, from now on, you're going to respond in an assertive, a warm, open, and honest manner if you do the training. Isn't it great to have this sort of control? We may not be able to control very much of what's out and around us, but we really have the option of deciding how we react to the things that exist around us. Now, just to point up the uncertainty, I'm going to leave you with a guarantee that I like to pass on to people. Would you give me this? Let's see the guarantee I can give you. May need a little focus on that.